Today we're talking good cops, bad cops, crooked DAs, drug smugglers, CIA agents, con men, and my hometown, Buford, Georgia, Gwinnett County. What's being called In the Land of Lies by one of my favorite podcast creators. His name is Sean Kipe. He's doing it with the man named Henry Ball that wrote this book about who we'll be talking about. Who is Mike Chappell? Mike Chappell was a Gwinnett County police officer that answered a call to the Apple Valley Trailer Park off Craighead Road to the residence of Imogene Thompson. Imogene Thompson had a son named Michael Thompson, who was a known crackhead around Buford. We had a lot of those around town. And he just worked at Subway at what was called the Buford Mall. It wasn't a mall. It was a shit theater and McDonald's and a Subway. And he answered a call that she had half of her $14,000 inheritance stolen, and Officer Chappell proceeded to tell her that thieves don't steal half your money, your son steals half your money, and she refused to press charges. Within 2 weeks, Imogene Thompson was found dead at Gwinco Muffler Shop on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard, and he had to work the scene of that murder. In between that time, she had reached out to the police department to have him stop by one more time, and they agreed that Michael Chappell was going to try to run the boo on her son, Michael Thompson, to try to get him to give her money back, the $7,000 that was missing. Imogene Thompson, the night that she was murdered, Michael Thompson and some other officers that one of them ended up really turning on him. There was a big storm there in Buford, and they took refuge at Firehouse 14 on Buford Highway, where Captain Honeycutt was the captain. I'm pretty sure I know some people related to him. And they're there until 9:46 when he gets a call. 9:56 he gets a call. He was gonna head out anyway to go to the gym that he owned, so he was gonna go pick up the cash, whatever, and then go on about his night, which he did. Michael Thompson and Amy Parker, their alibi was they were together. Michael Thompson went to Subway, got some cookies and a drink, went to go talk to a man about a job, got nothing, came back to her house, and then they ended their night. That's their alibi. Imogene Thompson left her house at around 10 and to go to work in Norcross. She went 2 miles because, like I said, they were off Craighead Road. She just made it to Peachtree Industrial at Gwinco. It was, the one right there on the left if you're coming from Swanee on Peachtree Industrial and you're approaching Sugar Hill. She made it there. The police ended up running a roadblock there to catch witnesses and figure out. They got a bunch of different witnesses that said a bunch of different things, and they're all covered in the podcast and on this. And you got to understand that area, especially if it was storming. You couldn't see anything much. It had to be very dark. There are people that describe seeing a car like Michael Thompson's with like 4 people around Imogene Thompson's car. The blood spatter, like when you talk about the evidence in this case against Michael Chappell that they didn't have, the blood splatter, the shots had to be done from inside the car. She wasn't shot from up above, as they would say. There was no blood splatter. They tested gunshot residue on his rain jacket, Michael Chappell. That never made it into the courts. Let's see, Michael Thompson stayed at the American Inn days after his mother was killed, and Michael Chappell's first lawyer, Walt Britt, who represented many police officers, had an investigator. They got information of a gun, .38 caliber, the same caliber that was used in this murder. It was found at the American Inn, 50 feet from the room that Michael Thompson stayed in. And the GCPD showed up, they cleaned the gun, and then within 2 weeks they had incinerated the gun, which was not normal protocol. That didn't matter that they did that. That didn't come up in the trial. Danny Porter kept that out, of course. The police officers that were involved in this, you got to understand, I think they saw Michael Chappell. I mean, he had this evidence that he had been collecting, this recon on the activity in Buford. As a matter of fact, the officer that was opposite shifts of him, Chappell had been collecting information on him. And Michael Chappell had all this info, was storing it at the police precinct. When they arrested Michael Chappell for this murder of Imogene Thompson, that evidence disappeared from where they picked it up to wherever they were supposed to take it. Just disappeared. And that alone should have triggered the investigation into J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan being the officer opposite shifts that he had all this dirt on. What actually triggered it was when Michael Chappell was being held in the Hall County jail, which, by the way, Hall County, when I grew up in Buford and Sugar Hill, we knew people that said Hall County had the Dixie Mafia deep in the detectives unit. I mean, there's some epic stories that went on in that time period about them. So, anyways, he's being held at Hall County Jail. Walt Britt is his attorney that he hired. And Walt Britt comes and asks him if J.P. Morgan could be setting him up. Says he's got information that J.P. Morgan is setting him up. And immediately an investigation starts into J.P. Morgan. And through phone records, they figured out that he received a call from the jailer. And after that call, he hung up the phone, left his dinner table, went upstairs, vigorously typed up who knows what, and then blew his brains out with a service weapon. The officers, when they showed up at the house, one of them deleted everything that was on the hard drive, including whatever he typed up. With the officers that were most likely implicated standing right over him. All these ugly, disgusting people that watched him delete what was ever on. I mean, none of this made it. And I mean, I don't know. It's just wrong, dude. All this is wrong. And so growing up in Buford, you knew that there was a lot of things going on. Not everybody. I mean, me and my group, we were latchkey kids, and that can go a couple different ways. We definitely experienced life early, and they got rid of all the evidence. They got rid of any evidence that could have helped figure it out, and then they depended on just nothing that would be considered science today, nothing that would be acceptable. Everything is questionable, down to the autopsy proves that she couldn't have been shot from outside the car. She had to be shot from inside the car. I mean, the whole story, it's incredible what people were able to get away with before the internet, honestly. And they did a story like on one of those TV channels, and I have the interrogation where they interrogate Michael Chappell and tell him that they're going to charge him with this. He's in uniform. He's a giant. He's 6'7". I mean, I lived in Georgia. I didn't hang out with anybody that was 6'7". Jared Cook, maybe. Everybody is like, what the hell are they talking about? He owns a gym. A few months before this, a guy that lived in the town named Steve, he ran a personal auto body shop that like built race cars. This guy was also old school, like military special ops, and Steve Mitchell. So they said Chappell did all this for $7,000. Steve Mitchell offered him, there's a discrepancy, either $20,000 or $40,000. I think in the podcast they say 40. I think in the book they say 20. Anyways, his house burnt down because it sounds like these fucking police officers went into his house and burned it down. Everybody says this dude was crazy. He's not the first person I've heard that was 100% secure in knowing that there was surveillance going on and people were watching us in Buford. I had a friend. He was a local chiropractor, a friend's father. He was a local chiropractor, great guy, and he carried around this is before camera phones. He carried around a disposable camera and binoculars everywhere. And he always said, if these motherfuckers are gonna watch me, I'm gonna watch them. And he did. And he would say that he had all types of crazy shit. They thought that this guy, Steve Mitchell, was nuts. He started camping out behind his house, and he saw guys go in his house in the middle of the night. So he goes in his house. He gets jumped from behind, gets in a scrap with him, and he runs in the woods hoping they'll chase him because that's his playground. He lives back there behind his house, really, because he was convinced people were watching him and were going to come after him because he was also running surveillance in downtown Buford. His shop, I got a video I'm going to little narrate of Google Earth that I did, and his shop was right down next to downtown Buford. You got to understand, as kids, we were told, like, when you go into Buford, you need to know that you're being watched. Your plate numbers are being written down. Whenever we went to our friend's house, I'm not going to say his name, but he lived not real far from that muffler shop, on past it a little bit deeper in the next set of lights. He would say when we parked in his driveway that we were all being recorded. But downtown Buford, where these people were talking about, and there where the Section 8 was, man, it would be popping. Cars deep all the time. I mean, you knew. I remember riding with one of my buddies, and we got pulled over. It was one of the only few times I ever rode with him, too. And I remember the cop telling him, I don't care if you have a pound of meth in this car, I'm looking for the guns. That was strange. That was just a weird thing to say to somebody. But all he had was a taser on him. And I think and they let us go. But that's the type of weird shit that was going on. It's like they were watching, but they're allowing certain things to happen. But then certain things they wouldn't. I had another friend that his father was a police officer in Duluth. He lived with his mother in Sugar Hill. He rode the bus with me since we were little kids. He started selling weight. He switches to meth too, and because that's what was huge at the time. And he's doing great. No resistance at all. Moves his family into a bigger house and everything as a high schooler. And he gets offered a kilo of cocaine to sell it one time, and right there at the Applebee's across from Mashoney's in Buford that Mr. Chappell would have had to pass to go kill Miss Imogene Thompson, he got surrounded by the vice officers, and they threw his ass away for 10 years. He's actually a success story. He got out and worked his way up through a large grocery chain and is head of logistics in the southeast United States or something, as he should, right? Logistics. I've been saying if they think there's going to be food shortages, they just like they took over the avocado trade, they should just hand all of agriculture and meat industry over to the transnational drug cartels, because all their products get to where they're going on time. Won't have any food shortages, will you? They do everything for profit. They would do that too. Just saying. This is pre-internet. I don't remember anybody talking about this, but it was also when O.J. Simpson was going on. We had the Olympics. I mean, I was at the fucking Olympics, raising hell as a little kid. And then the bomb went off. I think the night after we were down there, maybe. So this dude's arrested, and then he's just in jail. And his trial goes on, and his defense is shit. And it's basically, not basically, it absolutely was not, I don't even know the word, a proper defense. You're supposed to be able to have a proper defense. This guy was friends with Danny Porter. They had worked together previously. They had a gentleman's agreement on the final summations just to let each other go without making objections, and Danny Porter just threw in a bunch of bullshit and conjured up all this just hearsay and nothing. And this is the thing. Me and Mike Chappell, we wouldn't be on the same side of any type of situation. Had his fate ended up different and me still living in Georgia, absolutely not. We would have been on opposite sides of things. It's so crazy to me that this has been allowed to happen to their own, that they did this to one of theirs. It's insane. I mean, growing up knowing everything about Gwinnett County Detention Center and just what happens in the situation of that place, what it all is. And then to imagine that they're filling it with people that are selling drugs that quite possibly were being brought in with the protection of police officers. And this guy was getting close to finding it out. And that is why they may have pinned this on him. I mean, there is a strong case for a very corrupt group of people. One of them that killed himself like with of Chappell's arrest. And then the story behind one of the officers who got charged with all this destruction of evidence, and he went on the dude's computer where he typed for 15 minutes before he blew his head off. His wife heard him typing. He typed like 15 pages or something, a couple pages, 3 pages. Nobody knows what's on it. They say that somehow they have admitted that it was about like 4 officers, something like that, and wrongdoing, but it was all deleted. All of everything on the hard drive was deleted by this guy with the officers that were possibly involved standing right behind him, like monitoring him on the guy's computer. And the dude's dead right there too. But mind you, the dude killed himself. He's sitting there and they go straight to his computer and start to delete the fucking hard drive. That's completely nuts. And I think that hard drive would have immediately cleared this guy, by the way. I think everything on that would have flipped Gwinnett County upside down. And which, by the way, there's been multiple investigations into all types of bribery. I mean, Gwinnett County is dirty. Maybe everywhere's dirty. But I'm a little hazy because he did 2. One of them, Trafficant, Youngstown. There's a great podcast called Crooked City that's being released right now about this dude, James Trafficant. I think his name's James Trafficant. He was interested in Chappell's story, which is kind of crazy because this dude was like pretty mobbed up, but he was really for like the working man, really for police officers, and he was for Chappell, and he sent down a lawyer to do Chappell's appeal. And that lawyer brought Boris Korzak. Boris Korzak is an investigator. He was a KGB agent, double agent, CIA, KGB, and for whatever. I'm pretty sure. But he also worked deep cover for the CIA. So maybe he didn't. I don't know. The CIA agents can go to prison too. Oh no, they didn't pay him. That's what it was. He sued them because he worked for him for like 7 years and they didn't pay him. His son Robert had 3 kidnapping attempts. So this dude becomes the investigator. So Trafficant, he sends Randy Mott, and Randy Mott has Boris Korzak as his investigator. Randy Mott, I read his whole brief that he tried to get a new trial, and to me it was impeccable. Somewhere, I'm trying to find it, but I'm not sure where, I read like an interview with him, and he was saying that when they went to the courthouse this day, he From their hotel all the way to Gwinnett County Courthouse, Gwinnett PD was parked on the side of the road, standing outside of their car, watching them drive to. I mean, you're talking hundreds of officers just standing there watching them all, like they knew where they were, and they all were radioing to each other to pay attention to this car as they went to the courthouse to put in this brief, which was turned down. And he lost this, and he's exhausted his appeals, I'm pretty sure. It's crazy, but that's one CIA connection. But what's nuts is the guy that killed himself, J.P. Morgan, which is a weird name. But this dude Morgan killed himself, like I explained. And Boris found a witness that connected an entire drug ring that involved, from my knowledge, it involved an airfield near Lake Lanier, and they were bringing in kilos of cocaine via plane, and they were paying this guy J.P. Morgan for protection. And I found another article earlier in the week from like 82, 83, and it was basically written about Georgia as a whole, but it was written from either a DA or a police captain, and they were explaining that every single county, every single district, and every single little town in Georgia, every officer knew that there was a chance that they would be offered thousands of dollars to just allow shipments to go through. That, because there was, you got to imagine, so much cocaine was being flushed into the southern United States. That's when Barry Seal was popping through Mena, Arkansas. You know, you're talking loads, tons and tons of that shit. They brought so much in, the price dropped by the 90s. I mean, that's how much they brought in. You got to remember who they were bringing it in for, what they were bringing it in for. You know, they had to get money to the Contras to fight communism. Haha. So Randy Mott does this, it fails. But the guy, the witness, okay? So this guy's name is Quint Rutland, okay? And he went and testified, and they call it, his street name was like Bulldog. He looked like a bulldog. Walter Quint Rutland. This guy is the guy that, when he said it's about time somebody has some balls and tells the truth around here. And he did this after he got out of jail. He was serving, and he served several sentences in Georgia corrections. But he got out, and he went and testified for Michael Chappell. Boris found him. It's funny because Boris was involved in the Cold War. This guy was involved in drug trafficking, which was also involved in the Cold War. I mean, it's very like, this dude has, when you look him up, the only thing you find is where he died, in Texas County, Missouri. I'm assuming this is the same guy, because this is a guy that was going by Ron Reagan, okay? A preacher who liked to carry a gun while he preaches. Let him live the last 14 months or something of his life on his ranch. And the guy had like a new air conditioner put in, and he wrote a bad check or something. So now they gotta figure that out. But the preacher actually seemed, he said he loved the dude and he didn't care that he had a bad past or whatever. Preacher's an interesting guy. Quint Rutland testifies that he's bringing cocaine and paying J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan apparently has this flunky who is this junkie, and his name is Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson has a mother named Imogene Thompson, who is dead by a police officer who's accused of the death, Michael Chappell. Okay? Oh, how the circle just weaves on in. The evidence is not there. They had this raincoat. This is the 90s, dude. And they weren't handling shit correctly. They have, witness testimony of how it was handled. how they did ballistics test on it, gunpowder residue, and it came back negative, and they just didn't add that in to the case. They didn't tell the defense, they didn't tell anybody, the jury, that they didn't find any gunpowder residue, and he supposedly had just killed a woman wearing, they said he was seen, that's how they saw him, was the big yellow raincoat. 6X. This guy was a fucking giant. I'm actually filming this at like 3 o'clock in the morning because at midnight I remembered my heathen convict skills, and I got online and found him, and I wrote him an email to tell him that I was making this episode. I wish him well, you know. It's crazy to have your entire life just ripped away like this. But Quint Rutland, man, this dude was a smuggler, and it's funny because this article tries to really paint him like he's just a liar, and then he wanted a military funeral. That's all he wrote in his will, and he said the military should honor that because I was whatever military. And it says, records show Rutland served in the Army on active duty for a few months in 1982. And then it says, most likely for initial training as a member of the Reserve or National Guard. But they didn't give him any information about the guy beyond that. And this guy, what he kept going to jail for was like fraud, bad checks, impersonating people. Like, where do you learn those skills? And when you go in the military and then you start doing shit like impersonating people, you know, smuggling drugs, it's the Ronald Reagan era. What is, and he's a pilot. Barry Seal's dead. Barry Seal died in 86. Somebody had to pick that shit up. I mean, the slush fund's got to get filled somehow. They had to send money around the world. Just like they still got to. They're still doing this shit. So, yeah, that's it, I guess. Like, I mean, I could tell you, like, the details of how crazy the police acted in this situation, but I'm not, like, you should get the book and check it out. It's not long. It's really easy to read. Here's something. There were certain people involved with this, and this is how their careers went after. Okay, the upside to convicting a highly commended and popular street cop would assure their futures and allow their stars to rise, and that is precisely what happened. In the Gwinnett County Police Department, Assistant Chief White became Chief of Police White. Captain Davis would eventually follow White and become Chief of Police Davis. Lieutenant Laddie, that fat fuck, went on to become Captain Laddie, and shortly after that, Assistant Chief Laddie. Sergeant Klein quickly became Lieutenant Klein, and shortly Captain Klein. Investigator Burnett retired from the GCPD and went to work for the District Attorney's Office as lead investigator Burnett the next day. ADA Scott Smil went on to the State Attorney General's office, and Danny Porter was re-elected District Attorney of Gwinnett County and served in that capacity for 28 years, citing the Chapel case as career-defining. You fucking criminal, you. Oh, yeah. Bro, never did I think I'd be making a video defending a cop that was in jail, okay? But this is wild. Nobody should be in jail that didn't do anything. That is fucking nuts. There's arguments that you shouldn't put people in jail anyway to rehabilitate them because it doesn't fucking work.